Hey, welcome. Have you ever just stared at a sentence, wondering if it should be to do or doing? Yeah, you are definitely not alone. It's one of those classic English grammar puzzles. But today, we're going to crack the code for good. So let's jump right in. So check this out. We've got the same exact verb, stop, but these two sentences mean completely different things. In the first one, an activity just ended, but in the second, a whole new one began. So how is that possible? Well, it all comes down to the little word that comes after the verb, and that is the secret we are unlocking today.
All right, first up, let's meet what I like to call the ing team. The easiest way to think about these verbs is that their whole personality is about the action itself. The feeling, the process, the actual experience. So, anytime you're talking about, say, enjoying something, or maybe avoiding something, or spending time on an activity, you're probably going to need a verb from this team. It's all about the experience of doing the action.
And here are some of the star players on the team. You've got verbs like enjoy, finish, suggest, and keep. When you see one of these, a little light should go off in your brain that says, hey, an ing form is probably coming up. You spend time studying, you risk losing, you keep trying. See? Let's look at this one in action. Now, the key verb here is suggest. And while this sentence has a few moving parts, the idea is that verbs like suggest are usually followed by an ing form, like in the phrase, I suggest taking a break. It's focusing on the activity itself. Okay, now it's time to meet the opposition, the infinitive team. And if the ing team is all about the experience, well, this team is all about the destination. They're always looking forward, always focused on a goal. These are the verbs that set up whatever is coming next. They're about something that hasn't happened yet. Just think of the to in to do as a little arrow that's pointing forward, pointing to a plan or a hope, a promise or a decision. And here are the key players for this team. You decide to go, you plan to visit, you hope to see, you refuse to accept. You see that pattern, right? Every single one of them points to a future action or some kind of outcome. Okay, time for a little pop quiz. You must remember to choose or choosing a password. Now, based on what we've just talked about, which one just feels right? Is remembering here a past experience or is it a future task? This question actually is the perfect gateway to our most fascinating group of verbs. Welcome to what I guess you could call the advanced level of the game. These are the shapeshifters. They're special verbs that can actually play on both teams. But here's the twist. When they switch teams, they change their meaning completely. Let's go all the way back to our very first example. To stop walking means the action of walking is done. It's over. But to stop to buy a drink means you ended one action for the purpose of starting a new one. That infinitive, to buy, explains the why, the future goal. That's the huge difference. Okay, let's solve that password puzzle from a minute ago. When you remember locking something, you're looking back. You're pulling up a past memory. But when you remember to return something, you're thinking ahead to a future task. So for the password, it's a future task, right? You must remember to choose one. Regret is another fantastic shapeshifter. Regret asking is super personal. It's you looking back on a past decision and feeling kind of bad about it. But regret to inform you, that's a very formal, polite way to introduce some bad news you're about to deliver. Totally different feelings in situations. And finally, we have try. Try taking an aspirin is like running a little experiment. You're testing it to see if it works. But try to phone someone is all about making an effort, attempting something that might be difficult or might even fail. The key difference here is experiment versus effort. Okay, you've met the teams, you've met the tricky shapeshifters. Now it's time for just a couple of special cases that are going to make you a true master of this whole grammar puzzle. Let's talk for a second about verbs of perception. Basically, these are the verbs you use when you're just observing the world, seeing, hearing, watching, feeling. And they have this really cool superpower. They can change their structure to change the emphasis of what you observed. Now, this is a really subtle difference, but it's so cool. If you say, I saw her close the door, it means you saw the entire action, from the very beginning to the very end. But if you say, I saw her talking, it implies you just caught a snapshot, a piece of an ongoing conversation. The grammar actually lets you define your perspective.
All right, that's enough theory. Let's put all this new knowledge into practice. We've got a question here taken straight from our source material. It's time to see if you can solve the puzzle yourself.
Okay, so here's the scenario. You're faced with this choice. Now look at that main verb, ask. Think about the teams we just talked about. Is ask about a past experience or is it a request for a future action? What do you think comes next? And the answer is to put. Of course it is. Ask is a classic member of the infinitive team. You're requesting that they perform an action in the future. You are pointing them toward a goal. See? You've totally got this. So let's boil this all down. This is your master key. Just 3 simple steps. First, find your main verb. Second, figure out what team it's on. Is it about the experience or is it about a future goal? And third, always do a quick mental check. Is this one of those tricky shapeshifters? That's it. That's the entire logic.
And there you have it. The puzzle is officially solved. The moment you start thinking in terms of teams and personalities, instead of just memorizing long lists of rules, you can start to intuitively pick the right form every single time. So the only question left is, what mystery should we solve next?